Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final session of the Mi'kmaq Conservation Webinar Series, or at least for now. My name is Ali Rivers, and I am the Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas Project Coordinator with the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq, and I will be your moderator for this evening's session. And before we dive in, I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping rules. If you have not already, please put yourself on mute, and we ask that you stay muted for the rest of the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat box. And at the end of the webinar, we will have time for a short Q&A where we can answer your questions. We will also be drawing for a door prize at the end of the session, so please stick around for your chance to win a collection of stories authored by Rita, Shalan, Joudry, and Alan Syliboy. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording as well as additional resources will be sent to everyone next week. And to start out this evening, I wanted to introduce you all to Elder Barbra Syliboy, who will open us up tonight. Barbara is a respected elder and Mi'kmaq educator from Eskasoni First Nation and has lived and worked in Eskasoni all of her life. Barbara's father was a master storyteller and the nephew of the late Grand Chief Gabriel Syliboy. Barbara has been employed with the Eskasoni School Board since 1983. In those years, she worked as a classroom teacher, a Mi'kmaq language teacher, guidance counselor, and vice principal at the Eskasoni Elementary and Middle School. Presently, Barbara is employed as the Mi'kmaq language resource developer for the TLE Center. Barbara is a fluent Mi'kmaq speaker, sacred language keeper, and writer. She has told and written numerous Mi'kmaq prayers and stories. In her spare time, she has worked on the translation of various government documents, the honoring 400 years Gepide Demenege book, the Cape Breton Cap site, work in our time stories, and more recently, the translation of various books from the Bible into the Mi'kmaq language. So, Wela'liek, Barbara, for joining us tonight. I will pass it on to you to open us up.
Hi, thank you for the wonderful words. And like I said, I was telling you earlier, I want to use a prayer that my sister Helen translated. Like Helen was a champion of the Mi'kmaq language, and she did a lot of work in it. And so this prayer includes the 7 sacred teachings, and that's the one I'm going to do for you tonight. Kisuk, Wela'lioq chidwolalagot, kisignamuya. Wela'lioq chidwolagis kulmawidanen, akadamulek, Pisquan tane klaman kisliado tantil minuegan. Ignamuinen and sidwogan. Klaman, Chijitisnen dan kokwe kelu fula sithamu. Ignamuinen ex salsudinen. Saltutinen, Klaman kisisiawatisnen ex salsudin sitami. Ignamuinen kepmidel sultiden. Klaman chijitisnen ex salsudin sitamiao. Ignamuinen migudel sultinen. Klaman mawan notajidel siglugadman waladet. Ignamuinen menagajootnen. Klaman mawan eulek isna eulalao wigmajo. Ignamuinen penogedel sultinen. Klaman mawan pisi agies pidel siba wigmajo. Ahniskam ignamuinen kedleweyudi klaman wakame kadao. And Kamalamoni now, Ahan Chijahamijina, Dan Tijanamu, Nekel Mekanik, Nadliach. And in English, Creator, thank you for this day you have given us. Thank you for allowing us to gather here today, and we ask you to enter where we are so that your teachings will work in us. We ask for wisdom so that we will know what is good in this world. We ask for love so we can spread your love everywhere. We ask for respect so that we will know that everyone comes from one place, from you. We ask for bravery so that we will not be afraid to do your work here. We ask for honesty so that no one will lie or harm anyone else. We ask for humility so that no one will be superior to another. And Lord, we ask for truth so that we will see you in the future on the last day with clean hearts and spirits. Amen.
Wela'lioq, Barbara, for starting us off in the right way tonight, and that was beautiful. And
Wela'lioq.
I would like to now introduce our presenters for tonight's session, Hannah Martin and Charlotte Denny. Hannah Martin is an Unusuku from Dahamiguch, Tadamagush, Mi'kmaq, and is a member of the Wego-Begwittik Millbrook First Nation community. Hannah is a passionate advocate for Indigenous rights. She also takes great pride and humility in carrying on ancestral knowledge and traditions that have been passed down to her through her family, such as basket making, speaking the Mi'kmaq language, hunting, fishing, foraging, and learning about our non-human relations on the land. Hannah acknowledges her reclamation of Mi'kmaq knowledge and as the most important endeavor in her life journey, and attributes this education to her elders, knowledge keepers, family, community, and the land. In 2019, Hannah also received her Bachelor of Arts honors in Indigenous Studies at McMaster University as a Joyce Crawford Loran Scholar. Over the years, she has had the privilege of working with and for Indigenous peoples at the local, national, and international level, with a special focus on the injustices faced by Indigenous peoples from the impacts of resource extraction industries. Hannah has completed internships with La Fundación Nueva Esperanza and Rabinal, Guatemala, and the Maori Law Review in Aotearoa, or New Zealand. She has worked as an associate with First Peoples Group, an Indigenous consulting company in Algonquin Territory, and with the Tadamagush Center as the Peace and Friendship Project Coordinator. Hannah has also engaged in advocacy work at the United Nations level as a former North American focal point of the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. Through these positions, she has strengthened her leadership, community organizing skills, public speaking, presentation, and facilitation skills. Hannah's goal has always been to bring her learning back to her homeland to contribute positively to her own nation. Now she has the privilege of serving Mi'kmaq communities through her role as the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq as the coordinator of the Nuji Kelo'toqatijik Earthkeeper Network. And Charlotte Denny is from Eskasoni First Nation and is passionate about preserving Mi'kmaq knowledge, culture, and species at risk. Charlotte is also the president of the Nova Scotia Native Women's Association Eskasoni chapter. In 2017, Charlotte received her Bachelor of Science Technology in Environmental Studies at Cape Breton University. Charlotte is a Mi'kmaq natural resource technician as well as an earthkeeper with the Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources. Wela'lioq, Hannah, and Charlotte for joining us tonight, and I'll pass it over to you two now.
So the Earthkeeper Network, aka Nuji Kelo'toqatijik, is I tried to define it because it's all new. This is a brand new pilot study. We're trying to define it right now. So you can all have my own definition and Hannah will have her own definition because we're both working from, I'm working from Unama'ki and she's working mainland, and our communities have different needs and so our definitions will be different. So my definition is I try to define who are the earth keepers. So in the beginning, I wanted to have both Mi'kmaq and English, but realizing that we're having a little short time, I decided to just have this one slide translated. So Nuji Kelo'toqatijik na Nuji anko dimidish gimikinuk na deluisijik Nuji Kelo'toqatijik. Anko dimidish dan gidantudijik waisis bisun koi weswadudijik mahamugoituk. Amashpa depaha Kedanto kisna kedip net win should get mimajuan. So the earth keepers, to me, are guardians of our traditional territories to ensure proper harvesting of wildlife, medicines, and natural resources without compromising its sustainability for future generations. Now, this program we're building, we have the Earth Keeper Network, and who's involved is Mi'kmaq community members throughout Nova Scotia. We want knowledge keepers, cultural practitioners, and environmental stewards. And this work will be led across mainland Nova Scotia with CMM and in Cape Breton with the UINR, Winnemaki Institute of Natural Resources. The Earth Keepers will be educating about Mi'kmaq environmental concepts and principles such as Nedugalimk, Umsidnohama, and two-eyed seeing, which I am trying to define myself so that people know where we're coming from. It's all about collaboration and capacity building. So the literal translation of Nedugalimk is the time period of collecting provisions. So it's provision time. So as a part of Nedugalimk, Ulnu harvested and hunted with the concept of protecting and maintaining the life of all animals and medicines that were used. And for this reason, Ulnu were migratory to maintain the integrity of the life on the land and the water for future generations. The concept of Umsidnohama, it means all my relations. And as Mi'kmaq, we realize we have a connection to every living creature that lives on the land, in the water, or flies in the skies. This connection also includes each other in a collective consciousness, which extends to the spirit realm, which includes our ancestors. So when we say all my relations, we're offering tobacco for anything that was harvested, gathered, or hunted. And we are acknowledging our connection and relationship to all living things. A tobacco offering is often given in exchange for a life or item that we are taking. Two-eyed seeing, Edwaptumunk, is the ability to gain perspectives of both Western and Mi'kmaq, which means indigenous ecological knowledge for intercultural collaboration. As stewards of the land, we take the strength of both ideas and customs to help maintain and sustain our natural resources for the benefit of all and for our future generations. Now, the proper gathering of provisions is something that is one of my biggest concerns, which is why I added on here, because I noticed that a lot of the traditional indigenous harvesting practices are not in effect anymore, or must be lost or something. I'm not really sure, but to have correct harvesting practices, we promote the sustainability of medicines, food, wildlife, and natural resources. So if I decide to take Bogosi, which is, what is it in English? Damn, I don't know. But if we decide to take a plant of a certain area, we would only take 1/3 of that plant. We would uproot a plant and only take 1/3 of it for our our provisions. 1/3 will be for the spirit, and the other 1/3 is for the sustainability of that entire plant. So we don't just go over there and pick up the entire plant, uproot it. We would just take only 1/3 for ourselves and return the plant exactly where it was. So nothing is ever taken without giving thanks. A tobacco offering and a prayer of gratitude is offered for what was harvested. So it's not only for the plants, but animals as well. We have Ulnu harvesters that, that go up on the mountain to harvest moose. And even my own sons, they will go and say a prayer, they'll offer tobacco. And we make sure that whatever we harvest, whether it's plants or animals or medicine, nothing is wasted. Everything is used or shared. Now, the history of the role of the Grand Council and district captains when it came to Nuji. Our Mi'kmaq territory was governed by the Grand Chief and a chief of each of the 7 districts throughout Mi'kmaq. Their role was to govern and maintain the proper harvesting practices of wildlife and sustainable governance of each district. Throughout history, they met on the mainland Nova Scotia to discuss any ecological changes, wildlife sustainability, and political aspects of each district. These meetings would last anywhere between a week to 2 weeks because there was a lot of territory to discuss. The Grand Council would decide which wildlife can be harvested without losing its integrity to sustain itself. It is through proper harvesting and management that has allowed our people to thrive in our territory for thousands of years. And the source, I got this from Red Earth, Tales of the Mi'kmaq. They have the governance of the Grand Council. So this is what modern stewardship looks like now. So the Earthkeeper Network is an Indigenous-led land-based program. So me, Hannah, and Evan, we are your boots and eyes on the ground. On the mainland, Hannah Martin, Nuji Kelo'toqatijik, Earthkeeper Network Project Coordinator for CMM, and me and Evan are Mi'kmaq Natural Resource Technicians for UINR. These projects that we had on the go, so far, most of them were delayed due to COVID, but these are the things that we were able to accomplish before the COVID crisis. Moose survey both in Cape Breton Highlands and mainland, that's in the winter of 2020. Turtle surveys in Mi'kmaq last year, and we're doing them again this year, but we're still waiting for the restrictions to lessen. Hannah worked with the salt marsh restoration with Ducks Unlimited Canada. And we did a collaboration with Marguerite Fish Hatchery. We're doing fin clipping of salmon. Hannah did black ash stewardship in the summer and fall of 2020. And we had youth engagement where Hannah was doing hands-on traditional knowledges and practices. We had community engagement session regarding Glooscap Cave and Trail, but that was, we were participating in that one. Pine Marten surveys, we did them both in mainland and in Cape Breton. So we have a lot of these same programs that we're also gonna do. It's been really fun. I mean, I really love going out into the land and just being part of it. Practicing my rights. So that, we knew there was hardly any time. So that's the end of my presentation. Wela'lioq Bejidayo. And thank you for all of you guys for joining from me, Hannah, and Evan.
Awesome, Wela'lioq, Charlotte. And you said some really amazing things and shared some amazing things about our network. And to follow up, I'm gonna present a short slideshow as well to supplement what Charlotte's gone over and to maybe give you a little bit more information from the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq side. And I also want to say Wela'lioq, Ali, for the introduction today, and to Wela'lioq Barbra for the opening prayer. So I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so as Charlotte mentioned, I'm the Nuji Kelo'toqatijik Earthkeeper Network Project Coordinator for the mainland, and I work out of Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq under our forestry department, or under our forestry program, and within our Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So we've grown to be quite a big organization. We now have over 100 staff at CMM, and we have just like a government, we have various departments. So I'm based out of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. I work with a really great team. Ali and Megan, and also Aaron, who's on the call, are three of the people on our team that I work quite closely with, as the Earthkeeper Network is very tied in with the Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas project. So I'm really excited to share with folks tonight about this project. It's something that is very close to our hearts as Earth Keepers in our own life and in our work now. And it's something that is starting to really get lots of traction across the nation. And so this slide just shows that, you know, it explains the goal of what Indigenous Guardian programs are. So basically, they're Indigenous nations or communities that establish these networks of Indigenous community members within their nations that are the, as Charlotte mentioned, the eyes and ears on the land, or as we call them, the boots on the ground. So we're the ones who are out on the land, and of course, this is a program that's going to be growing. Right now, we're in our third year of the pilot funding, which comes from Environment and Climate Change Canada. But we're in our third year of that, so we only have a few of us on the ground right now. But the big goal in the future and the big vision is to have many, many more Mi'kmaq community members from across our territory who are actively out on the land, you know, monitoring our species at risk, looking after our language, doing education with youth, doing land-based learning, and also monitoring important, you know, projects that are happening on our land. So if there's a project happening that needs monitoring work done, our people are going to be the ones who are the experts, who have that expertise, and who are going to be actively employing that knowledge on the land in real time, keeping track on projects that might be going on the land. And also this program is going to see each of our communities on the mainland, at least, take a different approach and focus on stewardship activities that are really important and pertinent to their specific communities. So there are different names across the nation that different programs have. They're all very unique, and some of them, like the Watchman program in the Haida Nation, actually reflect a historic role that they had in their communities of the Watchmen, who would actually protect their communities from outside harm. So they took that historical concept and they brought it back into a modern context, which is really, really cool. The word Nuji Kelo'toqatijik, that phrase was put forth by our elder Albert Marshall. And so our assembly really liked it. This is an assembly-led initiative, and we also are including all the communities who also aren't on the assembly. But so this project involves all of our communities in the mainland and in Unama'ki. So as I mentioned, it's an assembly-led initiative. So it involves the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq, the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs, as well as UINR, Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources. Again, we're in our third year of the pilot phase, but we're looking to grow in the future. And once again, the role of the Nuji Kelo'toqatijik is to monitor, manage, and steward our lands and waters of Mi'kma'ki. A couple of months ago, we officially had our communication strategy passed and approved by the Assembly, and we're also working to get it approved by communities not sitting on the Assembly. But the current definition or the vision for our network is to restore and steward Mi'kma'ki, the unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq, within the traditional districts of Gaspoeg, Sebeganegadig, Escagawagig, Signict, and Unama'ki in Nova Scotia. So we had to kind of name all of the different traditional districts because it was really difficult and tricky for us to try to maintain the integrity of our districts while also being specific to the districts that fall within the province of Nova Scotia, because you know, we are three organizations that are based in the province of Nova Scotia. So we tried to bring that the historical map into our project in that way, in our vision. So our objectives also laid out in our communication strategy. We have 5 of them: to steward the traditional territory of Mi'kma'ki within Nova Scotia, using Mi'kmaq concepts and principles, as Charlotte mentioned, such as Nedugulimp, Msitnogama, and Eduaptamump, to educate and build awareness on Mi'kmaq rights and responsibilities to the traditional territories within Nova Scotia, and to foster connectedness to the land and waters, and to facilitate intergenerational sharing of Mi'kmaq knowledge, to build capacity in Mi'kmaq land-based skills and environmental technician skills, and to facilitate the collection and protection of Mi'kmaq knowledge. And finally, to strengthen Mi'kmaq governance, self-determination, and nationhood through the restoration of Mi'kmaq environmental legal traditions and stewardship. And I really like number 5, and I think I like them all, but I really I'm so passionate about this project, and I feel so strongly about it because when we talk about our interaction and our relationship with our land, as Charlotte mentioned, this is our rights as Mi'kmaq people. You know, with that comes responsibility, of course, but really what we're doing is we're rebuilding a mechanism of our traditional government. Because everything that we do as Mi'kmaq people is connected to the land, even our language. So what we're doing is we're creating this mechanism, the Earth Keepers, who are actively taking this role and taking on this responsibility of rebuilding things like our environmental legal traditions. What are those? What do they look like? How can we rebuild those? I think one way that we do that is talking about these concepts and discussing what these concepts actually mean in our work. Such as Eduaptumump, such as Msitnogama and Nedugalimp. So Charlotte and I have been talking together a little bit about Eduaptumump, and you know, having this important conversation about, sure, we know what this concept means, but why is it important? And also, like, how do we apply it in our work? So for me, one of the things that that I was thinking about in the past couple of weeks when we were having this discussion, you know, it's always on my mind when I do my work. I'm also Mi'kmaq, and I'm also Scottish on my mother's side. So I am a part of both worlds. I walk in 2 worlds. And so I find myself in this like crossroads of trying to understand Eduaptumump, even in my own life as a Mi'kmaq and Scottish woman. So, you know, this is a really big concept. For me, it comes down to consent with Indigenous peoples, specifically like free, prior, and informed consent about the land and about our relationship to the land, and also directly consent with the land. I was actually out for a wood turtle survey. I actually was out today, but I was out last week with one of my colleagues, Anthony King, and we were having this conversation about having consent with the land about what we're doing. And what does that even look like? And for us, when we were doing our turtle surveys, we were saying, you know, it's easy for us to think we know what's best for the land, but really these turtles are living here and it's their home. The riverbank is their home. And, you know, we need to give these turtles what they need. We need to protect their habitat. We need to listen and observe and do whatever we can to rebuild their home. And by doing that, by looking after the land and looking after our non-human relations, such as the wood turtle, we are indirectly improving our health and improving our well-being. So if we actually listen to the land, and this concept of consent is, I think, really complicated in terms of like consent with the land, but as Charlotte mentioned, there's another lens, which is that spiritual lens. And, you know, if we listen, we can get these messages from our non-human relatives. We can have, you know, that spiritual understanding as well as an ecological understanding about what they need. And so I felt like that conversation between me and Anthony was really interesting. And I think that even like that dialogue is important to Eduaptumump. I think, you know, having that conversation between a Mi'kmaq and a non-Mi'kmaq person on the land, doing these surveys with the turtle was just like so significant. I also think that Eduaptumump, as Albert Marshall says, is more than just a word. It's a methodology that needs to be applied. It's not just a theory. You know, historically, with the history of colonization, there has been many attempts to erase Mi'kmaq people from this landscape, both, you know, physically with our presence, but also spiritually with our knowledge. So I think for me, Eduaptumump is really saying, okay, how do we ensure that Mi'kmaq perspectives aren't just included, but they are a part of the methodology that we use when we're on the land doing things like surveys. And so, you know, making sure that we're not repeating history in that way, and that Mi'kmaq and Western knowledge systems are employed on a level playing field. I'll pass it over to Charlotte.
Just to reiterate what Hannah was saying, Edwamtumamk is important, and it's the concept of two-eyed seeing. So not only looking at the Western knowledge, but also including our indigenous knowledge. And we have a lot of it. We've been living in North America for 14,000 years. So with us still being here and having such a vast set of resources in our territories, then we've been doing something correct. The two-eyed seeing, I'd like to see it incorporated in the framework process. Like Hannah said, I don't want to see it as just a concept or an accessory that somebody would need for funding. I think that it has to be actually applied. And in order for us to do that, we can't just sit there and wait for them to grasp these concepts and apply them. We have to be active stewards in our own land and govern our own resources. Not 1 inch of this land is actually, you know, owned or given up or anything like that. It's all owned by us. The natural resources are ours. If we talk about fishing, the territories, the entire maritime provinces is our territory, is our fishing grounds. The entire Maritimes is our hunting grounds and our fishing grounds. But because of, you know, provincial restrictions and that sort of stuff, it kind of limits our rights to do these things. But for us to have an active part in our own governance, I think it's Earth Keepers are really important network to actually come into. And we don't just need just people that are educated with university degrees. We need people that have traditional knowledge, and just to incorporate everything that everybody knows, because it's a collaboration. We're trying to have capacity building, and we don't want our two-eyed seeing just a concept or be used as consent. So I think we got a lot of work to do. I think this is going to be like great. It's taken off throughout the entire country. So when we become active, we heal the people. And when we heal the people, we heal the land. And together, I think together, I see great things. And I think this collaboration it's going to actually be a great thing. I see great things happening. I'm very, I have a positive outlook on the great work that we can do.
Okay, so how do we apply Edwamtumamk? Charlotte and I believe that the Nuji Kelo'toqatijik Earthkeeper Network is going to help us achieve a real application in real life of Edwamtumamk through, as she mentioned, capacity building with training, experience on the land, and gap analysis with Mi'kmaq knowledge. I think capacity building, you know, for us, I think that experience on the land is really, for me, where I have felt that I have gained the most in my role, because you're actually, when you're on the land, you're able to observe so much, you're able to learn so much, and that's a way of learning that you cannot achieve, you know, in a book. So I think that capacity building with training, but really for me, I put such an emphasis in my work on bringing people on the land and allowing them to have all of their senses alive and active in that place at that time. And I think that that's where, you know, people are really going to gain that experience and that knowledge, and also building the network within our Mi'kmaq communities. So The big question for us next is, how are we going to continue this program? We are currently in year 3 of the pilot funding that we have been receiving from Environment and Climate Change Canada. Currently, the Indigenous Leadership Initiative is currently building a business case for a long-term sustainable funding source for a National Indigenous Guardian Network. And they're going to be, once they finish building this case, they're going to be lobbying the federal government to allocate this long-term funding source for Indigenous Guardian programs across Canada. So we're really anticipating this. We're really hopeful that we are able to continue our work and grow exponentially in the years to come so that we can expand this network and get more people in a career that is fulfilling for them on the land, doing what they love, and continuing their journey with the land, looking after it, being stewards, and with Mi'kmaq knowledge. And also currently CMM and UINR are looking for alternative sources of funding to continue this work, in addition to the Indigenous Leadership Initiative lobbying for that sustainable funding source. So we're working hard to try to identify places where we can find funding to extend this program. One way that we're doing capacity building in the next couple of months is we are going to be offering an environmental field skills training. This training session is going to be given by the Natural Resources Training Group, which is an amazing training group based out of BC. They have instructors all over North America, and they offer an extremely comprehensive 3-week program where students learn fundamental field skills such as forestry measurements, stream habitat classification and measurements, fish monitoring, water quality monitoring, soil survey skills, and wildlife skills, as well as things like basic navigation. And students can also have the opportunity to get their certification in electrofishing as a crew member, supervisor in training, or supervisor. So this is a 3-week training. We had hoped to have it May 31st to June 11th. Depending on how things go in the next week, we might have to postpone until the fall, depending on how much interest we get. The 3rd week of the training is a practical in-person experience, and that is for sure going to be held in the fall because we can't have that during COVID. But I can speak really, I guess, highly about this course. I took it last year. I actually traveled to BC and was able to complete this training, which is really important for me as someone who doesn't have a background in technician skills. But this is kind of a pilot training. We want to see how it goes. We want to use this as a pilot to see if this is a kind of training that we want to offer on an annual basis to earth keepers in the future. We think there's some great potential for it, but if anyone on the call is interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me. I can provide my email and give more information about the course. We're currently looking to select one Mi'kmaq community member from each of our 8 mainland Mi'kmaq communities, as well as we're inviting UINR to participate as well. And so, yeah, if you need more information, feel free to reach out. Next steps for us at Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq are to work with Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources on a social media campaign to get the word out about the network. We are also going to be doing community engagement sessions throughout the summer virtually to garner more interest and help to inform our communities about what we're doing and get their input on how we shape the vision of the Earthkeeper Network further. We're also going to be offering training and find opportunities to get Earthkeepers boots on the ground. And that's it for me. So Wela'lioq, thank you everyone. And hopefully we can get the video to work because I think that would be a great way to end.
We're naturally land stewards. It's a responsibility we have to protect our land.
It's a sacred part of who we are. Our environment is deteriorating.
The caribou declining at such a drastic rate.
Rivers have been really low, our snow depths have been really low.
I've seen over the years
the effects of climate change have not been kind.
And what our communities are really excited about is having our own people as eyes and ears on the ground.
We travel this land all the time. We know more about the land than anybody else.
Guardian is somebody who protects the land.
There's so many amazing Guardian programs happening right now.
There's a movement across the country. We need more land guardians.
C'est une campagne positive, c'est une campagne qui mobilise, c'est une campagne qui va rassembler.
It's allowing us to now take our power back.
It's just more powerful when you work together. Well, the more people, the better.
Land needs guardians.
I'm excited to be a guardian.
I'm so glad that got to play, Hannah and Charlotte. That's literally like one of my favorite videos. It's such a short little snippet, but it's so powerful.
It's so powerful. It always makes me cry. I'm like, it reminds me why we're doing what we're doing, because I think for me it can sometimes, a lot of our work is, I should say a lot of my work has been, like a lot of organizing and doing more high level work, and not always, being out on the land, or like, we're very much still in the early stages of our work. So I think this video helps me to stay grounded and reminds me of what we're building, and the work that we are doing. Like, we are doing that work right now. But it really makes me feel, very excited about what we're doing.
So I guess I will extend a big thank you, or Wela'lioq, to both Hannah and Charlotte for tonight's session. And again, what a great note to end on that video, just inspiring. And with that, we do have time for a couple of quick questions. So if anyone has any questions, please type them now into the chat box, and we can see if Hannah and Charlotte can give you some answers for those. A question from Karen about wood turtles. So are you finding wood turtles in places that are surprising to you?
Well, so last week we did 3 different days of surveys on the Nabusaknuk, the St. Mary's River, and we were doing that as a subcontract for Ducks Unlimited. So we were down there for 3 different days over the past 3 weeks. Last week we found 3 turtles, and this week today we found 4. And I think that at least one of the ones that we found today is a different turtle than what we found last week. So I'm pretty excited about that. In terms of places that we're finding them, I actually thought that we would find them closer to the actual main river, like the St. Mary's River, but the land that we're doing the surveys on, it has like some smaller streams and kind of, I guess there's streams that are running through the middle of the property. And that's actually where we're finding the turtles spending most of their time. I thought that we would find them along the main riverbank of the St. Mary's River, but I was pretty surprised to find that they were actually hanging out next to a more shallow stream, I guess. And they're also doing some really great restoration work there in terms of the wetlands of that property. So yeah, it's been so exciting. It was my first time seeing a turtle in real life, like in the wild, which sounds, even to myself, I spend a lot of time on the land, but I guess I've just never been in the right habitat and knew what to look for at what time.
They're not particularly loud either, Hannah, so.
No, yeah.
We unfortunately didn't find any turtles. I think we only found one, and it was near reserve, Waikagama. Other than that, we surveyed 25 rivers, and unfortunately we couldn't find anything. Last year we had to start later in the season. Some factors that would stop us from actually seeing turtles would be the foliage. Because, like I said, because of COVID and restrictions, Eskazoni was in full lockdown. We couldn't come in or out, and the rivers, like at the a pristine time to go would be like now when it's cool and when there's hardly any new growth in the foliage and stuff. So it'd be easier to find the turtles. But like I said, we had to start late, and we didn't, within the 25 rivers that we surveyed, only one was found, and that was near the reserve in Waikama and Onamagi. But that was surprising that a turtle would be close to a reserve, considering how many people come and go.
That's awesome, though. I'm going to have to get out with you guys sometime to look at these turtles. I find them accidentally. Honestly, I've only found a couple in my lifetime as well, and it's unexpected, never when I'm looking for them. And we have a time for maybe just one more quick question, just so we don't go over too much. So I'm wondering about Tracy's question. So could you share a little bit about what you learned about how to help black ash?
Sure. So I think it's one of the biggest challenges with doing black ash or WISCO stewardship has been the fight that we're going to have against emerald ash borer, because of course I try to be a realist sometimes, you know, a lot of the time with my work, and I know that as an invasive species that has already traveled and has made its way to Bedford, that we know of so far, it's not going to be long before this insect starts to travel across Mi'kmaq territory. In Nova Scotia, we have less than 1,000 black ash trees that we're aware of. But for example, in New Brunswick, the population is a lot healthier, and that's where a lot of our basket makers in Nova Scotia source our black ash from, and where I source my black ash from. So that's been one of the biggest challenges for us. I think for me, one thing that has given me hope, I suppose, is, well, one thing has given me reassurance, and then one thing has given me hope, I guess. And one of them is, the thing that's been giving me reassurance is that I think part of our work as earth keepers is going to be creating a strategy for giving the black ash trees a new life once it comes time for them to have to be harvested because of the emerald ash borer. I think that it's going to happen. I think the EAB is going to be just so widespread that we're going to have to come up with a plan as to how we're going to save the craft wood when it comes time to harvest. So I think for me, looking ahead and trying to be optimistic about that rather than being, you know, dwelling on the negative of that has given me reassurance. But I also have hope that some of the trees will survive and they will be able to resist the emerald ash borer and continue populating in Mi'kmaq. I also have hope in the fact that we've been doing black ash seed collection training with the National Seed Tree Center and working closely with folks like Donnie McPhee in learning how to collect the seed and store it so that it can be grown at a later time. So I don't think that, you know, I think that it's just going to be a new chapter for us in our relationship with black ash. Not necessarily completely a negative one. I think that there are ways that we can continue stewarding that species in a way that is obviously very like non-traditional in terms of how our relationship used to be with black ash. But I think that I've learned a lot just through doing things like collecting seed, knowing that we are doing these things to try to give WISCO a new life later on. And also learning how to set up traps for emerald ash borers, things like that. So I think there's a lot of positives there that will help us with that work. So.
Thank you for our unfortunately short little Q&A session. There is another question that was in the chat, but I have saved that and you can follow up with the fellow who asked that question at a later time. It just so happens to be the one that won the prize. So we'll have his contact information. So Wela'lioq again, Hannah and Charlotte for another great session. And thank you to everyone who was able to join us this evening. So I'm going to hand it over to Barbara again to close us out.
Hello, Nuji. You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I don't know what I turned off earlier, but I'm going to pray for your work to continue and to be successful. Was very interesting. Wela'lioq. I was very impressed with your presentations. Very interesting, and I hope that you can continue doing such a wonderful job of preserving our resources. Dante uti wagsidniskam okchidniskam ahwejwoliniskam nagliach. Okchiniskam megar Wela'liek dan delwijit kwewiek desigaska. Dan nuim tamoda an edelmawi school dasik get gisko. Nige edamolek siawian kwewinen dan del lugodiek. Jigalad win dan des sano on edegan no doubtina. Ach ignemuinen gisiaw logadmenen dan del boadmen classic and la sitkamo kowe. Kalaman wuli abijida desnen el nue haha. Nigmana wala beshoktida tahoy kisadbe nagliach. Dan telu ise wabisidniskam ochidniskam awejwoliniskam. Now, where is it one?
Thank you, Barbsy Beeps.
Oh, Maria. Yeah.
Molly.
Yes, well, Wela'liek, Barbara, and thank you again for everyone for joining us tonight for this session. And this isn't a goodbye, but rather a see you again. So we all hope you have a great end to your night, and there's still some sunlight out, so you might as well get out there.